If your mind is in the next pattern and your body is just going through the motions of this one, you're not dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eye so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering, who are we to be analyzing these pros? Cass and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. She has about 22 years and I have about 24. So tonight we are taking a look at a dance between John Lindo and Jessica Cox. Jessica McCurdy now, but generally we look at more like comp videos. This is a demo video though, so it's a little bit of a different feel to it, and we're talking about keeping it simple tonight. Like, that's our theme. So I think that the different vibe to it is very hopeful for that theme. So that being said, I think you can throw that in.
Yep. Link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch, and when you're done, we'll get to analyzing. So one of the things that I want to emphasize tonight about keeping your West Coast swing simple is when you don't go into a dance with an agenda and you allow it to be simple, it allows more room for play and communication between you and your partner. And it actually allows for a higher level of nuanced partnering and musicality, where it becomes an equal conversation. Whereas if you go into the dance either as a leader or as a follow, it doesn't matter what role you're in, with some sort of agenda that can complicate things and also make it messy and not as cohesive. And in my personal opinion, and I realize this is an opinion here, I feel like that isn't the integrity of West Coast swing. Like, the whole point is to partner with your partner and to communicate. So that's my 2 cents before we go to the screen share. Do you want to add anything?
No.
All right, to the screen share.
So I would say the beginning of this dance is something that we frequently talk about, where they're staying in like a closed position for like a decent amount of time. And I think that's extremely important. I think that if you really quickly go into an opened position, it kind of sets up the dance for like all the things happening and, not necessarily paying attention to each other quite as well. So I think it's really important to stay in a closed position as long as you can, really, so long as you feel comfortable with that.
I 100% agree. I just want to highlight a nice little element, because they're not just in like West Coast swing closed position, they're in like almost Argentine tango closed position, chest to chest. And John is allowing Jessica's hand to be on his chest, and he's got his hand over the back of hers. So that way her hand and wrist and arm and shoulder are in a comfortable position, instead of him like forcing her hand in that direction.
Right.
I swear every time I see closed position dancing in a movie or a TV show, I want to eat tomatoes through the TV at the leader, because they're always like shoving the follower's right hand back and hurting their shoulder. It's the thing. Anyways.
Yeah. It's always very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you feel when you see it.
Yeah. So the description of this video actually has Jessica's dance background in it. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh no, that's awesome.
Talk over that really quickly for a particular reason. This dance is really simple, but I want to point out that Jessica does have a lot of training, and it's not her lack of doing all the things isn't because she can't. It's because she's choosing to keep things really chill. So actually, I wanted to read what it says really fast. So it says, Jessica's classically trained and has been dancing since she was 5 years old. Her background includes jazz, tap, ballet, Latin, and ballroom. Her love for West Coast swing started at the age of 6 and has only continued to grow through the years. And then there's some other stuff, but that's what I wanted to mention really fast, because, just because you can do all the things doesn't mean you should. It doesn't make a dance better. It can make it cluttered a lot of times. And I think that this dance in particular, she really takes the time to just kind of feel out the beat. Um, and I like that sometimes. I don't think it's necessary all the time to just hang out and feel the beat, but this song in particular does have a really strong beat to it. So just kind of going with that, I think is really appropriate for this particular song and particular dance.
Mhm. Expanding on the cluttered idea, I just want to bring back an analogy that I've used in the past, where the idea when you're a master chef, part of what makes you a master is you know which ingredients to use when. You don't just throw every ingredient in your pantry and the fridge into the pot. Part of becoming a really advanced dancer is knowing when and why to use certain elements in your dancing, and that's what makes them more impactful. And you're only able to really do that with purpose when your baseline is more simple.
Yeah.
So like Alicia was saying in the beginning of this dance, I spend a nice prolonged amount of time in closed position before I send out. But here, John brings Jessica back into closed position for another extended period of time. So they're giving themselves a break. It's doing some lovely phrasing for their musicality. It's keeping it simple. And they're also pacing themselves because this is a teacher demo at a workshop, right? It's likely that they're doing the whole song, whereas in a competition, you've got 1.5 to 2 minutes. And when it's a longer song, pacing yourself with phrasing is more and more important, especially for those of us who are social dancing for the first time in forever and don't quite have the stamina we once had.
Yep. And yeah, like this situation in particular, it relates directly to a social dancing situation because they are dancing the full length of the song.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we had a conversation with Jess early last year, I guess.
Oh, yeah, yes, right before lockdown.
Yeah. And she was talking with us about how a lot of times when she's out social dancing, what she'll get is because leaders know that she's a high level follow, is that they'll just throw everything at her, like all of their cool tricks and whatnot. And she's like, it's really exhausting. Sometimes I just want to have like a normal dance.
Yep.
And I wanted to mention that I actually talked about that last week with Cassie. I was like, oh, I need to remember to talk about
that. Yeah. That was such a wonderful conversation we've had with her.
Yeah. But, I think that it's important to mention because even at higher levels, follows don't necessarily want and or need to do all the things to enjoy a dance.
Yeah. It goes down to like, what does a leader enjoy dancing and leading versus what does a follow enjoy dancing and following?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes leaders project what they enjoy in dancing onto the follow. So like they enjoy feeling powerful and leading tricks. They enjoy creating almost objectifying situations for their follows that are like hypersexual and stuff. And I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for that, and I'm not like blanket saying that's bad. However, I think one of the reasons why I'm popular as a leader is because I'm a follow first and I know what follows want.
Yeah.
So follows enjoy following me because I give them the musical opportunities that a follow wants to dance in the way that a follow wants to dance them, instead of forcing them into these arbitrary ideas of what I want as a leader that works for me. So and keeping it simple is one of the foundations of my leading. And that allows me to see, and it gives me the time and the space to understand what a follow is bringing to the dance with me in the moment, and to see where that could lead and what they might enjoy doing next.
Right. And that's not to say that you can't add in certain things throughout the dance, because you'll see even in this dance, like they do have some moments where there's a more trick almost, or there's Lindo's signature strut walks that happen.
Yes.
Things like that. But it's not, the dance isn't cluttered with it. It happens a few times throughout this like 3.5 minute dance,
Hmm.
which is a lot different than like every 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, it becomes the seasoning, or if we go back to the cooking
Mhm.
analogy, it's more like the salts or the herbs and spices as opposed to the bulk of the dish, like the pasta or the potatoes
Right.
or the meat. You want the bulk of your dish to be your foundation, your strong technique,
Mhm.
partnering, timing, quality of movement, and then
Yeah.
you can add flavor to it
Hmm.
as opposed to the other way around. You want it's like that joke. It's like, you want some coffee with your cream,
Yeah.
right? It's like, no, we want
Agree with
mostly
your
coffee, some cream. You want some coffee with your sugar? It's the sugar one. That's what it is, not cream. Anyways,
You guys get the point.
yeah. Can you tell I don't drink coffee? I want to talk about this really simple styling that Jess does through this pass, where she just syncopates and adds some time to the pattern. And it's really simple, but it's really impactful the way
Hmm.
she does it. So she starts slowing down her rotation and adds some simple syncopated footwork right around here. So she's not turning to face him right away. And that's like a really simple way as a follow to be additive instead of um, interrupting the lead. Like, yes, she added some counts to the pattern, but it wasn't to any extreme sort of
Right.
extent.
And just kind of touching back on what we were saying earlier, there's a time and place for doing, the most impressive things that you can. And comps are really that situation. Like there is a reason in comps for you to throw in more things in a more condensed amount of time. But as a general baseline, as a social dance, you know, that shouldn't be what you're going for all the time.
Hmm. So I love how right here, because it would totally be possible, if not necessarily reasonable, for John to lead Jessica into a one from this position. However, based on where they're at and the overall tone of the dance they've been having so far, and the how they really are keeping it simple on a fundamental level, they add 2 counts and do a bit of double resistance to re-engage in the connection, and they're not in any sort of rush to get out of this pattern. They're just letting themselves live in it.
Mhm.
And that's another like really important thing to keep in mind, is that you don't have to escape things. You don't
Right.
have to be like, if your mind is in the next pattern and your body is just going through the motions of this one, you're not dancing.
Hmm. Right. And generally, I think I should probably also add that generally, if you are trying to hit something, you can still do that within whatever you're already doing. You
Hmm.
don't have to rush out of what you're doing to hit something, in a specific way. You can almost always add something to what you're doing
Hmm.
to make something more pronounced.
Yep.
Um, I remembered what I wanted to add
Okay.
earlier. So I wanted to say that, I think a lot of times, all the classes that are offered tend to be pattern focused.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that sometimes we get this idea that, we have to have all of these patterns that we're working with. And that's really not true. Like, I know you've said that as a lead, you only lead a handful of things consistently, even though you
Yeah.
know so many different things.
Yep.
Like, I mean, it's great that there are so many different classes that give you some ideas. But I think that that's what that should be, is ideas to work off of, not
Hmm.
like cut and dry, like here's what you have to do, here's exactly how you have to do it. It, like, you don't have to do these patterns and whatnot that you learn. Like, honestly, the most important thing for you to learn is good technique, because if you have good technique, you can do so many different things that
Hmm.
you never learned, that just kind of happen naturally based on what you and your partner individually are doing. You just kind of work off of that.
Yeah.
Which is why it's really unfortunate to me that there aren't as many consistent classes that do focus on technique, because it is something that you really do have to work on. But it is the most beneficial thing that you could do for yourself.
Hmm.
Um, it's so important to creating great dances. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a ton of patterns that you can do if you can't naturally create something.
Yeah. And going back to what you were talking about, pattern-based classes, another thing that tends to do is it creates this idea that the building blocks of West Coast swing are 6 or 8 counts long.
Yeah.
But those are whole sentences. That's like saying the building blocks of the English language are whole sentences. The building blocks are the words. It's the vocabulary itself. And in West Coast swing, the building blocks are really only 2 counts long.
Right.
And uh, we're either tripling in those 2 counts or we're just walking it out in those 2 counts. And there's a beginning of a pattern, a middle of a pattern, and an end of a pattern, which is your
Mhm.
anchor. And understanding how those smaller building blocks go together is how you create more interesting patterns. So when you're learning a more complicated pattern in a workshop, it's really important to break it down into its component 2 count parts, because then you can notice, hey, this position that makes this next 2 counts possible, I'm also in that position on count so and so of this other pattern that I'm actually really good at already.
Mhm.
And then you can take that small thing that you learned, the 2 counts from the pattern in the workshop you're learning, and apply it to something you're already really good at, instead of thinking that that cool 2 counts out of this 10 count pattern in this workshop, it can only exist in that 10 count pattern. That's not how West Coast swing works. And as someone who does switch dancing a lot, where I dance with one partner and we go from leading to following, and then we trade roles over and over again, one of the things that makes trading roles so effective is understanding those same positions
Mhm.
in little 2 count increments. Because let's say count 4 of this pattern where I'm following also looks like count 2 of a pattern where I'm leading. And that's how the switches happen.
Do you mind going back to that one-footed turn?
Of course. It is so lovely.
So one thing I really love about Jessica is that pretty much any time she goes into a one-footed turn, she keeps it pretty simple. And this particular turn is great because she does keep it that, like, really simple, just like pirouette style turn, but was that she does something that's a very simple movement, and then she adds something really simple onto it in order to make this piece of music more emphasized. And it makes it just more musical in general.
Hmm.
But it doesn't, there's not a lot of complexity to it. I mean, I realize that one fitted spins in general are rather complex in and of themselves, but
Hmm.
it doesn't add a lot. Like, she's not dropping to the floor, or
Hmm.
really changing her posture a lot. Like we've seen that, and that's great. If you can do that, if you want to do that, great. But you don't have to. You
Hmm.
don't have to do that to make something more emphasized.
Hmm.
You can really just do something very, very simple.
Yeah, she basically just does very simple variations with her free leg.
Hmm.
And in the beginning, she's in more of a plie in her standing balanced foot, and then she stands up out of it to bring it tighter and faster. One thing I will add is that because Jess is taller than a lot of champion follows, she doesn't need to prep as much with her hips and legs to create a lot of momentum for her turn. So that's one of the reasons why her entrance into this can look almost kind of slow, like she's going through caramel.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's just simply because her legs are so long.
Yep.
I know from experience, if I prep too big on a one-footed turn, I will kill someone, and that someone might be myself.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was her exit is very, very like calm and smooth as well. Like there's not a very abrupt ending. She's not, doing something dramatic. But it's a really nice ending to it. She still takes it and makes it into something different that's not just her stopping. She compresses into him and then presses out to slide herself back, which is different than her just stopping. So what she's doing is you can see she places her hand on his side, but then you can watch her upper body, like her shoulders, keep rotating away from him, which creates some compression in that hand that she has placed on him. And that allows her to unwind it and press off of him in order to kind of spring herself backwards. Right, so you
Mhm.
can see right here, her chest is kind of diagonally away from him.
And I love how she adds just like the simplest little level change going down, which is in contrast to her very upright one-footed turn that she was doing.
She also takes that time to settle before she goes into the next thing that he leads her into, which we talked about, I believe, last week.
Oh yeah, this is the pattern I've been ranting about for 2 weeks. Ha, ha,
Ew.
ha. Excellent. Okay. So so 2 weeks ago I talked about this with Kyle and geez, who was dancing with Kyle?
Emmeline.
Emmeline. Jeez Louise. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, talking about Kyle and Emmeline. Then last week we talked about Jordan and Sarah. And now we've got two very tall people with long arms leading this pattern. And you can see if you watch John's right hand, it really preps her strong for her one. So that way she's almost single tracking that one. And then you'll see the way he brings this hand through, it's allowing her left foot to single track as well. So it actually kind of goes out from behind and then back in front into the line.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking the hand far enough away that the hand stays over the foot, and she's able to get this open position across her frame as if she's drawing back a bow to release an arrow. It is so important to let a follow open up her chest for this prep. I will rant for another half hour if I keep going, so I'm gonna stop.
It's like you've experienced this
Oh
problem.
god, I have this. So many leaders think they've got me prepped here, but my here, I'm gonna delete this. But my left arm is still at a 90-degree angle to my torso, and that's not prepped. Um, yeah, I've been thinking of the best ways to handle that because I'm really tired of somehow pulling a fast turn out of my ass when I'm not prepped. I'm really tired of it. So I'm currently coming up with ideas of how to dissolve it without looking like I don't know how to follow.
That'd be a nice place for like a little hook behind into a turn.
Ooh,
You know what I'm
it
talking about?
would. However, the other problem is they're right here when they do this. I would kill them.
I mean, if you stay in place and just swing that back foot around you away from them, you know what I
I don't
mean?
think you understand how in my space they are. Well, just you
You don't
wait.
have to move for this necessarily.
Okay. Well, I'll show you. We'll be for those who don't know, Alicia and I have actually not seen each other in person since a week before we started Nerdy West Coast Swing.
Yeah.
So we are quickly approaching a time when we can actually dance together again and like work on each other's dancing together again.
Mhm.
It's been a while. Yeah, anyways, onward. So one of the things I really appreciate about John is just how intentional he is with his musicality. And he really makes moments. Oh no, I'm going to be punny. He really makes moments pop. It's a chest pop. I am sorry. Don't cancel me. I make so many more puns when I'm tired. I don't know why. Tired or anxious? Pun master. That is me. Anyways, John, throughout what we've seen so far of this dance, he's been keeping it super simple. He's been focusing mostly on leading and creating opportunities for Jess to do her thing, right? But slowly over the course of this dance, he starts adding in more and more elements with the volume turned up. Because yeah, he's been dancing and he's been syncopating and he's been doing a more nuanced musicality up until this point. But he starts doing things at a larger volume, but very intentionally, and he's not doing it all the time. So he is also keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Again, I apologize for the pun. Also, if you struggle with sugar tucks, I'm just throwing this out there, watch this video over and over and over again because there are so many beautiful, delicious sugar tucks in this dance that is led perfectly, followed perfectly.
Yes.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
And I love this one in particular where Jess doesn't actually like check into it.
Mm-hmm.
She leaves that right foot behind,
Yep.
presses into it. It keeps it simple, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really great way to kind of work with the music. If you don't feel like there is an extra beat kind of in the middle there that would be emphasized, you can literally just as a follow leave that foot as is, and you don't have to check into it.
Yep.
It's just
Actually,
upper body.
yeah, I very rarely check into my sugar tucks because it's
Right.
also really common for leaders to leave their left foot forward. So they're doing like the leader's equivalent of that. And if you step forward onto your right foot and their left foot is right there, you might step on them.
Yeah.
I want to highlight, really pay attention to how the handhold is moving through space. So we've got count one. The handhold was very clearly driving down the slot, right? But now count one has happened. Jess has struck her right foot onto the floor. It's a delayed weight transfer. You can see her body is back away from her foot. But now pay attention to whether or not the hand travels. It barely traveled at all in comparison to how much it traveled through that count one. And
Mhm.
that's what allows Jess to have this gorgeous shaping. And essentially, John is prepping the prep.
Yeah.
And so that way, she can really gauge how much she wants to get up over her left foot for this compression. A lot of leaders tend to just take the hand all the way to them, and then a follow is already overextended by the time you're asking for compression, and then they have to kind of like lean their whole body into you Or in my case, sometimes I lift up my left leg to counterbalance myself. So you can see through here, hand travels quite a bit. It's in front of Mr. Blue Shirt in the back. It's not in front of Mr. Blue Shirt in the back. Whereas here, it's in the center of that like orange thing that we see reflected in the mirror, and then it's at the edge of the thing. So like relatively, it moved maybe like a quarter of how much it moved from count one.
Right. It's only really moving because he's starting to lift the arms.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to highlight that because it is gorgeous and perfect, and everyone should learn how to do it. Thank you.
I also really like that they both create like a shape to the diagonal with their bodies.
Yeah.
So we have Jess with her upper body rotating left, and John has that left foot diagonally in front of him, and he has his upper body. It kind of stays where it was, and he moves the legs. So his lower body rotates more so than like Jess, her upper body is rotating.
Yep.
And it creates a really nice shape together.
And I just want to highlight this because like it's beautiful. So the technique of John bringing that foot across in turnout and then being in this position where one foot is in front of the other, both feet are in turnout, so that way he can pivot and remain in turnout. Like that is really solid, important technique that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight it. I use it all the time. It's like my bread and butter for pivoting. Insert pivot gif from Friends.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Andrew said, and he leads her out of it with his hip.
Then we've got some lovely struts, but I also want to highlight they're not like power walking through these. They're not like trying to take people out at the end of the room. It's chill. Like so many times when people want to travel, you know, it's like, oh, travel at the audience. And then they overextend their steps and they go really fast and it's really aggressive. Just chill. It can be simpler than that and absolutely fabulous. Case in point, right here.
Hopefully we're at least being entertaining tonight, guys.
Yeah, I'm trying. I teach through comedy. Most of the time it's intentional comedy. Other times it is unintentional.
Yeah, I think unintentional overall.
Yeah.
Anywho.
I still love knowing that some of our viewers only listen to us, which is hilarious to me because then you have no idea ever what we're talking about. But I guess if our voices are soothing and or entertaining, that's fine.
John stops, which is indicating to Jessica, okay, we're like not traveling anymore. But I love what she does to emphasize like a little bit of a change in the music. So she stops and she grabs his arm with her free arm. But then she kind of like moves back on that right foot and then she kind of body rolls forward, which it's a very small thing, but it actually is a great way to show that difference in music because it's not a huge difference in music. It's not like a huge phrase change or anything like that. It's just a slight change in the music. But it's a really nice way to show something slightly different rather than just her stopping and then continuing walking. She adds a little bit extra to it.
Yep.
And that's the kind of styling I really like doing, is something that just adds a little extra to emphasize something.
And I want to highlight how that kind of movement can look different on different bodies. because Jess is very tall and lean and thin, whereas John is a much bigger person. And he's doing just as much movement through his pelvis and ribs through a lot of this dance as Jess is doing. It simply looks different on him because the edges of his body create different lines when in neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So a rounder body to create a round shape like what Jess is creating here would actually have to do more movement to create that same contrast. When Jess is in this position, she has almost harsh angles through her body just because she's in a more neutral position. And that's just because of how her body is built, right? And so she doesn't have to do much to create a contrasting curve through her body. Whereas a larger person, to create that same kind of contrast, would have to do more to get the same effect.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is your clothes. So like John is wearing really helpful clothes for what I'm talking about. So on one hand, he's got stripes, right, on his under t-shirt. And so through this whole section, you can see the angle of the lines of the stripes changing. So it makes it easier to see the rotation that he's doing through his hips. However, because of his loose open vest, we can't see the chest popping as much, at least from this angle, right? Because of the clothes he's wearing. This is one of those things that I feel like not enough judges take into account, is how the same technique will look different on different bodies simply because they're different bodies.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the end of my point. I will move on. Also, I just want to add, for those people who may not know John and Jessica, that they are really good friends. They've known each other forever. And that's why it's okay for them to do extra, I don't know, what word do I want to use? Like sexual things with each other. They're 100% platonic.
Yeah.
But they have consent to act that way together. Do not do that shit with someone you don't know on the comp floor. Not okay.
Or on the social floor.
Yeah, just no.
Just in general.
I once, in a local Jack and Jill, had a gentleman stop me like split weight in a break, and then he literally got down on his knee, put both hands around my ankle, and as he stood up, felt up my entire leg. And it was so... oh jeez. If that happened to today me, no, that person would not see the light of day again. But I was still like a very innocent baby Westie, and I felt so... ugh.
Andrew said knee in the face.
Yes. And I'm so tall, it doesn't take much effort to do that. So there's your warning, everyone. So this moment, see, they know each other really well. It is fine.
I know exactly why you're starting to talk about that.
Don't spank your partner if you don't have a pre-existing consensual friendship. Okay, thanks, bye.
It's kind of like the Benji and Tot video that we talked about, him grabbing like the back of her neck.
Yeah.
Kind of a similar thing.
Yeah.
They can do that. You don't do that.
Yeah. So while we encourage you to keep it simple, and things like that can be simple, doesn't mean that it's okay. We're not creating that. So we are abundantly, violently clear. We are pro consent here on Nerdy West Coast Swings. Right,
Back to what's happening.
Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
So Jessica uses, because John has both of her hands here, so she emphasizes with some hairography, which she is great at doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of her things. But I love the choice of the very dramatic hair flip. You know, it's not like a casual. It hits something.
All right, I'm gonna go through it slow. And because her hair is so long, it makes it look so much more extreme. But she's just taking her head from her left shoulder up and slightly to her right. That
Yeah.
is it. It's such a small range of motion on her neck. She's not compromising her neck at all.
Yeah. And we've talked about it before, but you can see she goes from just like upright. She drops the head to her left, rolls the chin down, but then from her chin being kind of tucked in to the like when it's more right, it's a little bit more drastic. So the dropping is a little bit softer than the like midway to right.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. First half is more gradual, and then the second half is more snappy.
Because you got to snap the hair.
Yep. And then you pray to the Westy Lords that you did not put on lip gloss. Back to some Westy content. I really love how she hits this really great forward lunge with a forced arch, right? And then she maintains the kind of integrity of that position to syncopate backwards.
Yeah.
So she's not like staying in the same pose, not moving for forever, but you still get more time with that shape that she made because she wasn't rushing out of it. She was letting herself be in the moment, keeping it simple, instead of being already her mind ahead in the next pattern.
Right. So here she starts with the weight on the right foot, presses it forward onto that left foot, and then uses that to kind of replace that weight onto that back foot. And that allows her to release the left leg and draw it up underneath her, closer to where that right foot is. And then she replaces the weight onto that left foot. So we have left, pressing back onto right, switching onto left, and then that right is free. So then she slides it back, and now we're just stepping back off of that left foot.
And she's also using John a little bit. Not for full counterbalance, but just for a little bit.
Right.
And then I love how at the end, this is something she taught me in an early lesson back when I was a baby Westie. How she's back up to her kind of standard full height for the next pattern. So you don't necessarily want to do that every single time, but you need to have the skill to go back to your neutral after a unique shape.
It's that contrast. We talk about it frequently.
Yep.
I also actually wanted to point out that the frame that's happening between them, it looks higher than what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, they end up in a W formation a lot in open. But that's simply, I would say, a symptom of just how tall they are, because what this allows them to do is to shorten the rope. If you could imagine them both having a more fully extended arms, they would be half to a full step further apart from each other. And so much of West Coast swing takes advantage of proximity to your partner, even though you may not think that's how it works. It is. That could be a different episode. But that is a struggle when you're both tall and have long arms, being close enough of the time to do interesting things. You need to shorten the rope to allow that to happen. And one of the ways you can do that is by simply bending your elbow. Quite handy.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that because I know we frequently see a connection that's closer to like belly button level. So I wanted to mention that and mention that it's not bad technique.
Right. Yeah. It's actually, you always want to make sure, particularly as a leader, that wherever your follows frame standard frame is, you want to adjust to that. So I would think what's going on is this is where Jess prefers to be, having a higher frame, and John is just accommodating that. I know personally I also prefer to have a higher frame, and it can be really hard as a tall follow if leaders force hands to waist level, because then we have to create this arbitrary tightness through this angle to feel any sort of tension in that direction, and it really nerfs our ability to connect, and it's quite sad. Now there's a pattern I could spend a whole episode on. I want to highlight again, so I was literally just talking about making sure the follows frame is comfortable. And I want you to notice how Jess's hand maybe goes down an inch tops as John is driving her through this rotation. He's keeping what I like to call a level experience for the follow, so that way her hand isn't changing in elevation drastically. A lot of leaders lead this pattern by pulling this handhold down at this point in time, which is not actually leading what you think it's leading.
Accurate.
Yeah. And he's making sure to rotate enough and to get his left foot out of the way so she doesn't step on his heel. It's like common sense. And then they've got plenty of room that they can actually cushion towards each other.
Yeah.
As opposed to both of them having to stay pitched forward so as not to whiplash their backs against each other. He leads it so nicely.
This is a really interesting moment because of the way that Jess ends up kind of sliding her feet around. Now, the way that she's able to do that is because of how much she's cushioning forward with her upper body into him. Right, so here she's kind of falling into that kind of upper body closed position. But then she kind of uses it and she kind of presses into it a little bit more, which allows the pressure to come off of her feet. And that allows her to more freely move the feet around.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, that will also, she kind of has to press into the feet in order to move them rather than having them just like totally free. Mm-hmm. But it's because she is able to get that leverage from his upper body.
And then I want to highlight how John is creating the opportunity for her to run into his chest before he invites her to give her weight to him. Mm-hmm. So through this moment, you can see that he's staying forward enough. So he's getting his right foot ready to really lean away from where he was. But his upper body is still forward up over his left foot at this point in time. So her chest can physically run into his chest. And so that way he can cushion her back and she feels safe because she had security going into the movement instead of, let's say he backed away right away and she didn't actually make contact with his chest until she was already weight dependent on him. Yeah. That's a really important distinction to make follows feel safe with you, because if you don't let them cushion into you until they already need to depend on your weight, they're not going to trust you.
Yeah,
I'm just going to leave that there.
That's the thing. I get led somewhat frequently into weight supported moves where the lead either didn't realize that they asked me to do a weight supported move, or they don't have the means to counter and absorb.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like that. It's a really uncomfortable position to be in as a
Mm-hmm.
follow, where you know that you can't really depend on your lead, and it's uncomfortable. It can put you in awkward positions, just like in terms of where you're physically at.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but because a lot of times you have to adjust for having to hold most of your own weight in that moment, and generally having to adjust for that is something that is kind of counterintuitive to what the momentum is leading you to do. So it just kind of makes it a really awkward moment. So if you as a lead are asking your follow to do something that is partially or fully weight supported, make sure you're ready to absorb and then to counter.
Yep. And to make sure that you are ready to absorb before they need to trust you with their weight.
Yep.
That strength of connection needs to be established in order to create the weight supported move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then one last thing I'll add while we're talking about it is this is actually something that John's size makes it easier for him to do, because he has a larger chest that protrudes out from his center farther. He doesn't have to position his body further forward of his foot to allow her to run into him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's cheating. It's quite sneaky. But if, for example, Jess were dancing with Jordan, who is much slimmer, he would have to be much more forward to create chest contact at the right time.
Yep.
Whereas John doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that you can even see in where the foot placement goes. Like, for most people, you would probably have to have a little bit more, not width, that's not quite the word that I want, but distance in between the feet.
Mm-hmm. So this distance?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, or bad jokes? Because I haven't had enough of them myself.
I feel like there's been plenty of bad jokes.
Oh, the pop pun is just... So next week we're talking about breath.
Yep.
In dancing, not necessarily musical breath, but actually the physical, mechanical, biological act breathing while dancing.
Yep.
Which might end up being more of like a chatting episode than a video analysis episode, just as a fair warning.
Right. We do have a video to look at, but it's probably going to be more chatting, even though we do have a video. So.
Yeah. And then the week after that, we are getting nerdy about swing timing, because we want y'all to have swing content in your swing.
Blues.
We
We need to chat about that.
all right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next week.
Next week.
I always wonder if like the Pacific Northwesters are going to find out I don't drink coffee and like come for me.
I mean, possibly. I, however, am the opposite of that. I drink coffee and I shouldn't. So. No, I guess I like breaking rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. For musical. And I think that's great. What was that?
Our Amazon Echo Dot. We just got a notification. We must have gotten an Amazon shipment. I don't know. I hate Amazon Echoes.
Your notification is like much higher pitched than mine.
Oh, gotcha.
Significantly lower, apparently. Anyway, sorry. Back to what I was saying. So just an update. My neighbor is now taking a very loud bath.
Excellent.
Apparently, she just feels like being very, very loud tonight.
The party.
Anyway.
Excellent.
I literally had to turn up my volume because I couldn't hear you.
No.
Just loud.
Well, Thankfully, your mic is mainly picking up you, so
That's great.
you're good.
But
Yeah.
no one else can feel my pain.
So one of the things that I really appreciate about John is he is very intentionable. Intentionable? Jeez, I am so tired.
New words.
I'm gonna start that over again. Wow. I'm that kind of tired where I just caught myself staring off into the distance for a second and realizing that my brain just completely blipped.
It's okay. I'm over here listening to some really loud motorcycle outside. So
Excellent. Excellent. John's got Westy thinking tongue. I actually that one a lot. I'll stick out my tongue and kind of bite it. I don't know why I do that. I hate that. I would prefer the Westy thinking gin.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, has this ever happened to you where you've been to social dancing, you just did a really satisfying hairography something, but you've got like a lock of hair just attached to your lips, and then your leader chooses to do both handed stuff for the next like 3 or 4 patterns, and you can't get the hair out of your mouth?
Not quite that specifically. However, I do have a comp video. And I think I showed this to you before, but I had somebody lead me in a really slow neck roll. So all of my hair just went directly forward in my face. And he had both of my hands where I couldn't do anything. So I just had all of my hair just flipped forward in my face.
Awesome.
Like a good 8 count. And I couldn't do anything about it. So it was there.
This is one of those common sense things. Leaders everywhere. If your follow has hair either in her mouth, across her eyes, or like attached to her lip gloss, she likely wants to fix it as soon as possible. Let her have the time and space to do that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, a lot of times you can just kind of like fix it. Just does this at some point, I think, in this dance. She just kind of like casually tosses it out of her face. But there are some times when that's not enough.
Yep. Sometimes you actually need a hand.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just hairography it out of the way. Sometimes it just sticks.
Yep. Still there.
Anyways, I really should just have a whole stand-up routine of shit I have experienced on the social floor.
It'd be lengthy. It'd be
It would. I would need to sit down to tell it. I would be a terrible stand-up comedian because I cannot stand up for long periods of time. Thank you, dysautonomia. Someday, we're considering having merch. So if there are any particular phrases or bad jokes from Nerdy that you want on a t-shirt or a hand fan or a dance shoe bag, let us know.
Personally, I think that hashtag thinking trend.